We'll be going over IRS Form 4768, Application for Extension of Time to File a Return and/or Pay U.S. Estate in Generation Skipping Transfer Taxes. This is a one-page tax form that you can find on the IRS website, and it contains 4 parts, which we will go into in more detail. Before we do, we should discuss the purpose of the form. Taxpayers use Form 4768 to apply for an automatic 6-month extension of time to file Form 706, which is the U.S. Estate and Generation Skipping Transfer Tax Return, Form 706A, which is an additional estate tax return, Form 706NA, estate return for a non-resident, not a citizen of the United States, or Form 706 QDT, estate tax return for qualified domestic trusts. This form is also used to apply for a discretionary extension of time to file Form 706, to apply for a discretionary additional extension of time to file Form 706, or to apply for an extension of time to pay estate or generation skipping transfer tax under Section 6161. Taxpayers should not use Form 4768 to request an automatic extension of time to file Form 706 GST, Generation Skipping Transfer Tax Return for Terminations, or Form 706 GSD, Generation Skipping Transfer Tax Return for Distributions. Instead, the Internal Revenue Service recommends that taxpayers use Form 7004, Application for Automatic Extension of Time to File Certain Business Income Tax Information and Other Returns. Who may file this form? An executor filing Form 706 or 706NA for a decedent's estate may file Form 4768 to apply for an extension of time to file or an extension of time to pay. Also, an authorized attorney, certified public accountant, enrolled agent, or an agent holding power of attorney may use this form to apply for an extension of time on behalf of the executor. A qualified heir who is filing Form 706A, or a trustee or designated filer filing Form 706 QDT may also use Form 4768. The form must be signed by the person filing the application. If filed by an attorney, CPA, enrolled agent, or agent holding a power of attorney, they must check the appropriate box. When should you file Form 4768? If applying for an automatic 6-month extension of time to file Form 706, 706A, 706NA, or 706 QDT, this must be filed by the original due date for the applicable return. If applying for an extension for cause and you have not applied for an automatic extension and the time for filing such an application has passed, an extension of time to file may still be granted if good cause is shown. File Form 4768 along with explanations of why the automatic extension wasn't requested and why a complete return wasn't filed by the due date no later than 6 months after the original due date for the applicable return. An additional extension is available only if you are an executor who is out of the country. An extension of time to pay estate tax applied for after the estate tax due date will generally not be considered by the IRS. You must file a separate Form 4768 for each return for which you're requesting an extension. Check the appropriate form number in Part 2 of Form 4768, and the applicable return must be filed before the extension expires. A separate 4768 may be required to request an extension to pay the following. 1. Taxes due shown on Form 706. 2. The tax due as a result of an amended or supplemental Form 706. 3. The additional tax due as a result of an IRS examination of Form 706. Or 4. The tax due as a Section 6166 installment payment. As I mentioned, there are 4 parts to this tax form. Part 1, identification. This contains the taxpayer's information, the executor, things of that nature. Part 2, extension of time to file Form 706, 706A, 706NA, or 706 QDT. Part 3, extension of time to pay under Section 6161. And at the bottom, Part 4, payment to accompany the extension request. Go back to the top. Under Part 1, in the identification fields, you will enter the decedent's first name and middle initial, followed by the decedent's last name, date of death. Underneath, you will enter the name of the executor, name of the application filer if it is a different person from the executor, and the decedent's social security number. Below that, you'll enter the address of the executor, the estate tax return due date, city, state, and zip code, as well as domicile of the decedent, county, state, and zip code, and the daytime telephone number where the executor may be reached. Under Part 2, please note that an extension of time to file does not extend the time to pay. If you are requesting an extension of time to pay, you will need to complete Part 3. At the very top, you will check the appropriate box for which the extension of time is being requested, whether it's Form 706, 706A, 706NA, or 706 QDT. Under the automatic extension field, an executor may apply for an automatic 6-month extension of time to file any of those 4 forms. Unless you're an executor who is out of the country, the automatic extension of time to file is 6 months from the original due date. If this is what you are requesting, you'll check the designated box and complete the form as instructed. The IRS will only contact you if your request for extension of time to file is denied. So unless you have been notified that your request was denied, the applicable return is due on or before 6 months from the original due date of the applicable return. You will want to keep a copy of this completed form for your records. Extension for cause / Form 4768 not filed in time for an automatic extension. An executor who failed to timely apply for an automatic 6-month extension may still apply for an extension of time to file upon a showing of good and sufficient cause, known as an extension for cause. You must file 4768 to apply for an extension for cause within the 6-month period after the original due date, unless you are an executor who is out of the country. If granted, the extension for cause extends for 6 months from the original due date and not from the date that the form is filed or the date that the extension is granted. To apply for an extension for cause, check the designated box, complete the form as instructed. You must attach a written statement explaining in detail 3 things. 1, why you did not request an automatic extension on a timely manner. 2, why it was impossible or impractical to file the return by the due date. And 3, specific reasons why you have good and sufficient cause for failing to timely request an automatic extension. The IRS will only contact you if your extension is denied. Keep a copy of this for your return records. The additional extension box is reserved for executors who are out of the country. They may apply for an additional extension of time beyond the automatic 6-month extension. To apply for this, you must check the designated box and complete the form as instructed, including entering the extension the date was requested. You must attach a written statement explaining in detail why it is impossible or impractical to file by the due date. An executor should apply for an automatic 6-month extension and then apply for any additional extension. You cannot combine an application for an automatic extension and an additional extension on the same Form 4768, so you will have to complete at least 2 separate forms. Applications for an additional extension following an automatic extension should be filed early enough to give the IRS time to consider the application before the extension date is requested. Under Part 3, an extension of time to pay. An extension of time to pay does not extend the time to file, and an extension of time to pay may not exceed 12 months. An extension of time to pay for reasonable cause may be granted for 1 year at a time for up to a maximum of 10 years. An extension of time to pay a deficiency for reasonable cause may be granted 1 year at a time for a maximum of 4 years. To assist the IRS in processing this form, you will need to read the bulleted items, check the appropriate box, enter the extension date you are requesting as indicated, and then complete Part 4. You'll attach a statement to the form explaining why it is impossible or impractical for the executor to pay the full amount of estate tax by the tax return due date. Examples of reasonable cause provided in Treasury Regulations Section 20.6161-1 alpha include the following. 1. An estate includes sufficient liquid assets to pay the estate and generation skipping transfer tax when otherwise due. The liquid assets, however, are located in several jurisdictions and not immediately subject to control of the executor. As consequently, such assets cannot be readily collected by the executor even with reasonable effort. 2. An estate is comprised in substantial part of assets consisting of rights to receive payments in the future. Examples would include copyright royalties, accounts receivable, and annuities. These assets provide insufficient present cash with which to pay the taxes when otherwise due, and the estate cannot borrow against these assets except upon terms that would cause a loss to the estate. 3. An estate includes a claim to substantial assets that cannot be collected without litigation. Consequently, the size of the gross estate is unascertainable at the time the tax is otherwise due. Or 4. The estate does not have sufficient funds without borrowing at a rate of interest higher than that generally available with which to pay the entire tax when otherwise due, to provide a reasonable allowance during the remaining period of administration of the estate for the decedent's surviving spouse and dependent children, and to satisfy claims against the estate that are due and payable. In addition, the executor has made a reasonable effort to convert assets into cash. So in Part 3, if the taxes cannot be determined because the size of the gross estate is currently unascertainable, you will check the box in the middle of Part 3. Then you will enter 0 or another appropriate amount on Part 4, line 3. You must attach an explanation. You'll enter the extension date requested, not more than 12 months, as you will have to file a separate Form 4768 for each 12-month period that you need an extension. And then you will follow all of the check boxes that apply. If this request is for the tax that will be or was due with filing the return, you'll check the top box. If it was due as a result of an amended or supplemental return, you'll check the second box. If this is for additional tax due as a result of an IRS examination, you'll check the third box. And if this is for a Section 6166 installment payment, you'll check the last box. In Part 4, you should know that an extension of time to pay will only be granted for the amount of the cash shortage. You must show on line 1 of Part 4 the amount of estate and GST taxes due. You can attach a copy of the return if it's already been filed, or you can enter an estimate of the tax. On Part 2, or line 2, you will indicate the amount of the cash shortage to include a statement of current assets already distributed, and if applicable, the plan for partial payments during the extension period. And line 3, you'll subtract line 2 from line 1 to come up with the balance due. Interest must be paid on any estate and generation skipping transfer taxes that are not paid in full by the original due date, regardless of whether an extension of time to file or pay has been obtained. For this reason, you should pay as much of the tax as possible by the original, not extended due date. As a response to your application, the IRS will send Form 4768-A to the executor if you're applying for an extension of time to pay. When submitting payment, you will attach a copy of the approved application and/or the 4768-A. The part of the estate tax for which the extension is granted must be paid with interest from the estate tax due before the expiration of the extension. At the bottom of this form, you will sign and verify under penalty of perjury that you are the executor. And if this form is being filed by someone other than the executor, you'll declare to the best of your knowledge and belief that you are either an attorney, a certified public accountant, enrolled before the IRS as an enrolled agent, or an agent that is holding a power of attorney. The power of attorney does not need to be submitted unless otherwise requested. Upon completion of this form, you will mail it to the IRS Service Center, attention, Estate and Gift, stop 824G, 7940 Kentucky Drive, Florence, Kentucky, 41042-2915. This address is located at the bottom of this tax form. That is our complete overview of IRS Form 4768. If you'd like, we've written a step-by-step article, which you can find on our website, teachmepersonalfinance.com. Simply type in IRS Form 4768 into the search bar, and our article should appear. If you like our video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. And if you have any questions, comments, please, as always, post them in the comments field. Thank you very much.